Hello friends, welcome to the program. The topic selected for the program is Binet Intelligence Test. The objectives set for the lecture are to understand various types of intelligence tests, to understand the Simon-Binet test of intelligence, to know how to administer Simon-Binet test of intelligence, and to calculate IQ from the same. Friends, the first successful test of intelligence was developed by French psychologist Alfred Binet in response to a request by French public school officials for a test that could identify school children at risk of failing behind their peers in academic achievement. The result was the Binet-Simon intelligence test, named after Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon. One of the first intelligence tests, the Binet-Simon test, quickly gained support in the psychological community, many of whom further spread it to the public. Lewis M. Terman, a psychologist at Stanford University, was one of the first to create a version of the test for the people in the United States, naming the localized version the Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale. Terman used the test not only to identify children with learning difficulties, but also to find children and adults who had above average level of intelligence. In creating his version, Terman also tested additional methods for his Stanford version, publishing his first official version as The Measurement of Intelligence, an explanation of and a complete guide for the use of Stanford revision and extension of the Binet-Simon intelligence scale. Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon believed intelligence to be a learned entity. Binet and Simon state, quote, "It seems to us that in intelligence there is a fundamental faculty, the alteration or the lack of which is of the utmost importance for practical life. This faculty is judgment, otherwise called good sense, practical sense, initiative, the faculty of adapting oneself to the circumstances. A person may be a moron or an imbecile if he is lacking in judgment. But with good judgment, he can never be either. Indeed, the rest of the intellectual faculties seem of little importance in comparison with judgment." Unquote. The Binet-Simon test and its successors measure intelligence by assessing intellectual skills and knowledge. They assume that the individual has had the opportunity to learn these skills and knowledge. If the person had the opportunity to learn them and did not, then this is assumed to reflect a deficit in intelligence. On the other hand, if the person has not had the exposure needed to learn these things, the failure to demonstrate knowledge of them says nothing about the person's intelligence. Dear students, let us now see the purpose of the scale. The Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale was originally developed to help place children in an appropriate educational setting. This test was formed in order to measure intelligence of children in accordance with their age. The test was used and varied among children from the age of 3 years to 12 years. Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon believed that children had a different form of intelligence than adults. Therefore, they needed to be measured in a different way. With this scale, they attempted to create a test which was standardized and would allow for the measurement of a child's intelligence in the present. This scale was originally created with the intent of classifying children as a means for them to receive special education. However, over time developed into a measurement of intelligence for all children, adolescents and adults. It can help determine the level of intellectual and cognitive functioning in preschoolers, in children, in adolescents and adults, and assist in the diagnosis of a learning disability, developmental delay, mental retardation or giftedness, used to provide educational planning and placement, neuropsychological assessments and research. The Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale is generally administered in a school or clinical setting. Now let's have a look over the description of the scale. The Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale has a rich history. It's a descendant of the Binet-Simon scale, which was developed in 1905 and became the first intelligence test. The Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale was developed in 1916 and was revised in 1937, 1960 and 1986. The present edition was published in 2003. The Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale is comprised of 4 cognitive areas, scores which together determine the composite score and factor scores. These area scores include verbal reasoning, number 2, abstract and visual reasoning, number 3, quantitative reasoning, and number 4, short-term memory. The test consists of 15 subtests which are grouped into the 4 area scores. Not all the subtests are administered to each age group, but 6 subtests are administered to all the age levels. These subtests are number 1, vocabulary, number 2, comprehension, number 3, pattern analysis, number 4, quantitative, number 5, beat memory, and number 6, memory for sentences. The number of the tests administered and general test difficulty is adjusted based on the test taker's age and performance on the subtest that measures word knowledge. The subtest measuring word knowledge is given to all the test takers and is the first subtest administered. The following is a review of the specific cognitive abilities that the 4 area scores measure. Number 1, the verbal reasoning area score measures verbal knowledge and understanding obtained from the school and home learning environment and reflects the ability to apply verbal skills to new situations. For example, of subtests comprising this factor measures skills which include word knowledge, social judgment and awareness, ability to isolate the inappropriate feature in visual material, and social intelligence, and the ability to differentiate essentials from non-essential details. Number 2, the abstract visual reasoning area score examines the ability to interpret and perform mathematic operations, the ability to visualize patterns, visual motor skills, and problem-solving skills through the use of reasoning. An example of a subtest which determines the abstract visual reasoning score is a timed test that involves tasks such as completing a basic puzzle and replicating black and white cube designs. Number third, the quantitative reasoning area score measures numerical reasoning, concentration, and knowledge and application of numerical concepts. The quantitative reasoning area is combined with abstract visual reasoning area score to create an abstract visual reasoning factor score. Number 4. The short-term memory score measures concentration skills, short-term memory, and sequencing skills. Subtests comprising this area score measure visual short-term memory and auditory short-term memory involving both sentences and number sequences. In one subtest that measures visual short-term memory, the participant is presented with pictures of a bead design and asked to replicate it from memory. Now, the administration and interpretation of the scale. The Binet-Simon test consists of a variety of items intended to reflect knowledge and skills the average French school child of a given age would have. These items are graded in difficulty according to age, so that, for example, items the average 12-year-old would be able to answer, a younger child would tend to miss. The test is administered individually, one-on-one by a person trained to do so, and requires upward of 2 hours completing. Administration of the Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale typically takes between 45 to 90 minutes, but can take as long as 2 hours and 30 minutes. The older the child and the more the subtests administered, the longer the test generally takes it to complete. The composite score is considered to be what the authors call the best estimate of G, or general reasoning ability, and is the sum of all of subtest scores. General reasoning ability, or G, is considered to represent a person's ability to solve novel problems. The composite score is a global estimate of a person's intellectual functioning. The scoring of the test procedure, a number called the child's mental age. The mental age reflects the level at which the child performed on the test. If the child performed at the level of an average 10-year-old, for example, then the child would be assigned a mental age of 10, regardless of the child's chronological age or the physical age. One compares the child's mental age to his or her chronological age. If the mental age is the same as the chronological age, then the child is average. If the mental age is higher than the chronological age, then the child is mentally advanced, or what we call as gifted. If the mental age is lower than the chronological age, then the child is mentally retarded or behind his or her peers in the intellectual development. So, dear friends, we may conclude that the first successful test of intelligence was developed by French psychologist Alfred Binet, called the Binet-Simon intelligence test. Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon believed intelligence to be a learned entity. The Stanford Binet intelligence scale is a descendant of the Binet-Simon scale, which was developed in 1905. That's all about Simon Binet's intelligence test. I hope you understood the content and enjoyed the program. Thanks for watching.